Welcome to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and we are coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Now, the X Zone is a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And there are so many strange and wonderful things that happen in this great world of ours day after day. And here in the X Zone, we investigate, we interview, and we entertain. My guest this hour from the beautiful state of Florida is Steve Alten. He is a New York Times best-selling author, and we're talking to Steve about his new book out today called Vostok. And Steve Alten, welcome back to the X Zone.
Thank you, Rob. It's a pleasure.
Now, your new book, tell us about it.
Well, Vostok is actually the sequel to The Lock, which came out back in 2005. And involves the same characters, but a totally different lake. Lake Vostok is located in East Antarctica, the coldest place on the planet. Mm-hmm. It's actually a liquid lake that's buried beneath 2.5 miles of ice. And it's never been touched before. It's 15 million years old. We think there's some type of life forms down there. And in Vostok, 3 scientists are going to venture down in a torpedo-shaped submarine that's equipped with lasers. Actual lasers that were are the ones that are going to be used on Europa to access that ocean. And the 3 scientists go down into Lake Vostok and they discover a number of things. And one of the things they discover that's actually a fact about Vostok is a magnetic anomaly that's incredibly powerful that we think could be an extraterrestrial ship.
Now, a lot of your research that you did for Vostok was with Dr. Greer. Tell us about Dr. Greer.
Well, I was fortunate enough to get to know Dr. Greer a few years ago. Our relationship sort of began when I wrote the sequel to the Domain series, Phobos, Mind Fear. And there was an extraterrestrial element in Phobos, and I had done some research on the Disclosure Project, mm-hmm. which is an event that Dr. Greer hosted back in 2001. And I wrote to him and asked him permission to use some of the excerpts from the Disclosure Project, and he was kind enough to allow me to do it. And I sent his wife and Stephen a final copy of the book, and his wife was enamored with the book. And I got a call a couple years ago, back in 2013, from Dr. Greer, and he said he would be in Florida in December of 2013, and would I like to meet? And so I absolutely agreed to do that, and our wives and us were going to have dinner together on a Tuesday night. And the Saturday night, before we were supposed to meet, 2 days before we were supposed to meet, an incredible thing happened. My wife and I were driving home from the movies. It was about 11 o'clock at night. The skies were clear. And looking up in the sky, we saw lights in staggered pairs, amber lights moving across the sky. And it was incredible. I pulled the car over, and we got out, and we stood there looking at these lights mm-hmm. as they were moving slowly across the sky about 500 feet overhead. And we watched them as they disappeared into the ether. We'd never seen anything like that before. We didn't even know if we should tell anybody. We felt sort of crazy watching these things. And 2 days later, we met for dinner with Stephen and his wife. And he said, that's not an unusual thing to happen before people meet me, because making contact with extraterrestrial intelligence is all about consciousness. So they were probably testing your consciousness a little bit. And we hit it off and came up with some ideas on how to help each other out. And a couple months later, I spent about 20 hours with him over a 2-day period doing interviews. And he gave me a lot of information that is all unfiltered and put into Vostok, which is really incredible information and scary information, but it is the truth.
Before working on Vostok, were you a believer?
I was skeptical before I saw the lights myself. Mm-hmm. But I watched the Disclosure Project, and the Disclosure Project is pretty powerful testimonials. And it's hard to be skeptical after you watch that. But after seeing the lights and then talking to Dr. Greer, I'm no longer skeptical. And in January of this past year, January 2015, Stephen invited me out to one of his Close Encounter 5 sessions, which is a week-long session. He had about 25 other guests with him. And we were in Vero Beach, Florida. And again on a Tuesday night, about 9:10 at night, lights came up over the ocean in front of us that were amazing. These incredible orange lights first one phased in and then the other, and they appeared for about 5 minutes and then they phased out. And we had photographers out there with night vision cameras and night vision video cameras, and got everything on tape and put it on YouTube, and it was an incredible contact experience.
All right, Steve, please stand by. You and I have to take our break. Exo Nation, Steve Alten is our special guest this hour, and Steve and I will be back on the other side of this break talking more about his brand new book, Vostok, here on the X-Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't forget, you can always listen to the X-Zone radio show at www.xzoneradiotv.com.
Thomas Jefferson was a Burgess of 27 when he met Martha Wales Skelton, a 22-year-old widowed heiress who was fondly called Patty by her family. They were married on January the 1st, 1772, and they took up residence in a cabin on the building site on top of a Virginia mountain that Thomas had named Monticello. As Thomas and Patty slowly built their first version of the great house at Monticello, the Revolutionary War was heating up. Patty, with difficulty, bore 5 children, but only 2 girls survived. Thomas's political career developed to the point where he was often away from home, but after he authored and signed the Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia, he resolved never again to leave his wife. He was elected the governor of Virginia, just as that state became the Revolution's last battleground. The Revolutionary War ended in 1781, and Thomas gladly retired altogether to
My family, my farm, and my books.
But Patty continued to want to bear her treasured husband a son, and late in the summer of 1782, she died of kidney failure at the age of 33, 4 months after having borne yet another girl. Thomas was so devastated by her death that he never remarried. He mourned her for the rest of his life, even as he helped to frame the peace in France and then became the first Secretary of State, the second Vice President, and the third President of the United States. This story is true. Thomas Jefferson was such an obsessive letter writer and record keeper that we know where he was and what he was doing nearly every day of his adult life. Every significant thing he says in My Thomas comes from his contemporary writings. My Thomas by Roberta Grimes is now available at Barnes & Noble, Costco, Target, Books A Million, Hudson Booksellers, Kmart, Walmart, Sam's Club, Walgreens, CVS, and online at Amazon.com. You can visit Roberta Grimes online at www.robertagrimes.com.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. Joining me from the beautiful state of Florida this hour is Steve Alten. He's the author of Vostok, and Steve's website is stevealten.com, and Vostok is available at all bookstores as well as online stores. All right, Steve, take us back to the time you're looking over the scene. You see all these different lights that are just, they're just there. What did you think at that very moment?
The time when my wife and I were looking into the sky?
No, when you were with Dr. Greer and a group of people.
It was amazing. It was. I felt that very humbled by it, very honored by extraterrestrials reaching out to make contact with us. We had a number of other different situations that had occurred. That was the big one. But using remote viewing techniques, I had seen something moving through my vision and opened my eyes just in time to see something passing through. Had a few other contact experiences, but that was a big one, and that was very humbling.
So did your contact experiences only start with your connection with Dr. Greer, or were you having them before?
I never had any kind of contact information or experiences before. Until 2 days before I was supposed to meet with Dr. Greer.
Now, when you say contact, have you actually seen these extraterrestrial visitors, or is it just the lights? Is it just the something of a fleeting moment that you catch in your vision?
Well, the lights that we saw 2 days before my wife and I were supposed to meet with Dr. Greer and his wife, those were lights from ships. I mean, you can see the lights moving by in staggered pairs, but you can see the form of a ship moving above the light. And it was very quiet, and it was very moving very steady. Was not any type of Earth ship at all. And we saw them actually disappear into the vapor, into the ether, as I said, into what was I learned later was a higher transdimensional space.
Why do you think so many people in today's society don't see these ships and bring it to a point where the fact of UFOs, extraterrestrials, cannot be denied by the governments of the world?
I think, like Dr. Greer said, it has to do with consciousness and a desire to make contact. They're out there, they're here, they're in a different trans-dimension, but they come out if the consciousness is right, if the desire in the heart is in the right place. And Vostok gets into a lot of details that Dr. Greer shared with me about how contact first started, how situations first began, and we've heard a lot about New Mexico and the situation in 1947 when 2 of them were shot down, and the book gets into all that history and reveals a lot of different facts that people don't know about extraterrestrials.
All right, let's say there's a group of people standing on a beach. Half the group isn't aware of this consciousness, and the other half is. Does that mean only half the people would see these UFOs?
No, I think that's at the discretion of the extraterrestrials if they want to make contact or not. If there's harbingers of bad experiences within the group, then they may not show themselves. But Dr. Greer is pretty good about weeding people out who aren't really of the right consciousness.
What is the right consciousness?
I think it's an open mind and an attitude of peace. That we want to make contact with these other beings, and there's not any kind of violence or threat on our part.
Violence or threat? How would they interpret violence or threat? If you're on a beach and they're in the sky, how can you be a threat to them?
Well, for one thing, 2 minutes after they disappeared, there were jet fighters in the area. So the jet fighters are attuned to what they're doing as well. So that's a threat. If there's a threat of jet fighters or other weapons around, they're not going to come out. There's self-preservation. And we want that for them as well.
So what do you think their mission is here?
Well, I'm not going. There's different species, and I think. Ultimately, it's one of peace as diplomats of trying to warn us off of some of the things that we're doing. Their first appearances that were documented happened, during World War II and right after World War II, and the testing of nuclear bombs. And I think we're sort of like dangerous teenagers playing with fire and gasoline.
All right, Steve, please stand by. X-Zone Nation. Steve Alten is my special guest on tonight's X-Zone TV show. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Steve Alten is the New York Times best-selling author of Vostok, and it's available online as well as all major brick-and-mortar bookstores. His website, www.stevealten.com. Don't forget, you can always listen to the X-Zone radio show 724 365 at www.xzoneradiotv.com, and check out our website for the X-Zone TV show, that is, at www.xzonetv.com. We'll be back after this short break. Don't go away.
While science pursues fact, magic accesses the quantum level, bridging random facts to form truth. As long as science and magic remain separate and polarized, the truth cannot be known. I'm Wilda Wieka. Join me on the Science of Magic radio program dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. During each episode, I'll be speaking with experienced and respected scientists and mystics. From astrologers to astronomers, from medical doctors to shaman, the scientific method to dowsing and intuition, we will weave together information from seemingly divergent practices to promote unity and enlightenment. Join me, Wilda Wiyaka, and the Science of Magic right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome back, everyone. Steve Alten is our special guest, www.stevealten.com. He is the author of Vostok. It's available online and in all bookstores. Steve, looking at what has happened recently with John Podesta, who came out and said that he regretted not basically blowing the lid off the UFO scenario in the United States. How does this affect society, and is this one step closer to disclosure?
Well, I hope it's a step closer. Dr. Greer is the one who briefed John Podesta, who gave him the briefing for President Obama back in 2009. And Dr. Greer also briefed Clinton's people as well. Mm-hmm. He was also shocked to see William Colby assassinated after Colby had decided to cooperate and provide not only technology but money to support the technology that could help us get off fossil fuels. And that's part of Dr. Greer's mission, is not just to let people know about extraterrestrial intelligence and how to communicate with them, but also to get us off fossil fuels with clean energy, zero-point energy technologies that the government has refused to patent and has actually black shelved a lot of technologies that would provide free energy to the world, and in doing so change the economy of the entire world, which is what the powers that be don't want.
Going back to the Roswell crash of 1947, a lot of people believe that the ET crafts have been brought to Area 51, and there's a lot of reverse engineering that has gone on since that crash. If that is the case, how come we're still using old-fashioned rocket technology? Why do we need to go to Mars if we, in fact, have this technology? And if, in fact, there were two UFOs that crashed in Roswell, and if, in fact, there is reverse engineering being committed at Area 51?
And Area 51 is an old area. Dr. Greer gave me the names and locations of the underground bases that have been financed with tax money and out of complete control of the congressional accountability, mm-hmm. and they're all listed in Vostok. To answer your question, though, it gets back to the powers that be. Who is running the world right now? Is it the United States? Is it the President of the United States? Is he really the most powerful man in the world? And the answer is no. It's actually a cabal that has sort of stemmed off of Majestic 12 and the most powerful banks in the world, and who control the major oil companies, and who basically want to keep us on the system that we're on right now, which is fossil fuels, because that's where they make money, that's where they garner their power from, that's what finances the military-industrial complex, and they don't want us on clean, free energy technologies or propulsion systems that use zero-point energy that can take us around the galaxy.
So are you saying, Steve, based on the information that you've gathered during your research for Vostok, that the only reason that the United States and other governments around the world are not releasing the information on ETs is because of the fuel?
It's not governments. It's a black ops government that basically runs these technologies and has reverse engineered these technologies and are keeping them to themselves. The President of the United States, Clinton tried to get this information out, and he was warned off of it with Colby's assassination. Obama was warned away from it about investigating it when he went to Oslo to accept his Nobel Peace Prize in 2009. The powers that be, the cabal, shot off a satellite weapon, which was a scalar weapon that, if you can actually look it up on YouTube, created this massive blue spiral in the mm-hmm. heavens. And so we blamed it on the Russians testing a weapon. But that was a scalar weapon, and it was part of the technology that was reverse engineered from ETs. And that was that was Obama's warning that you better back off, or we could take you out at any time.
So the technology of the that Obama used, who was it meant for? Was it meant for the ETs, or was it meant for other nations around the world?
Obama didn't use it. Was used as a demonstration to Obama that this group has the technology, and basically any sitting president is as ripe of a target as John F. Kennedy was.
Are we talking about New World Order?
I don't want to use those words. Dr. Greer uses the word cabal, and I agree with that. It's not a huge group of people, but it is a group of people that comprise the banks and the oil companies and the military-industrial complex.
All right, Steve, stand by. We've got to take our final break for this edition of the X Zone. Steve Alten is our special guest this hour. He is the author of Vostok. It's available online and at all bookstores. Steve's website is www.stevealten.com. Now, I'll be back on the other side of this brief break as we continue investigating the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell. And don't forget, you can always listen to us online for the X Zone TV show. It's xzonetv.com, and 724-365 for the X Zone radio show at www.xzoneradiotv.com. I'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Steve Alten is my guest this episode of the X Zone TV show. His website is stevealten.com. He's the author of Vostok. First of all, Steve, congratulations on your new book. I love reading your books. They're filled with information, and they're the type of books you pick up and you just can't put down until that very last page, so congratulations. Well, let's talk about Meg just for a few minutes. Tell our audience about Meg.
Well, Meg was my first book. It's a best-selling series about Carcharodon megalodon, the 70-foot, 70,000-pound prehistoric cousin of the great white shark. It had 7-inch teeth. This was the most, it was one of the most nastiest predator in the history of the world, actually. If you can imagine a great white shark the size of a 14-wheeler or 18-wheeler. Right. But we're hoping for a movie announcement soon about Meg, and to as part of the 20th anniversary of my writing of the book, I actually rewrote the entire book and combined it with Meg Origins, which was a never-published prequel that came out as an ebook a few years ago. And we have this 20th anniversary edition on sale. We have only printed 5,000 copies of them. We're not selling them in bookstores. You can only get them from rebelpress.com or stevealten.com, and each book is individually numbered. It's a hardback, and it's got 17 never-seen-before pictures inside the book. Tremendous artists supplied them over the last 20 years, and it's really a collector's item, so I encourage your listeners to get it before we run out.
You know, I've got to say, I can't believe it's been 20 years.
I can't believe it's been 20 years.
How do you feel when you look back and you see what has happened over the 20 years that since you first released Meg, and here it is 20 years later, and you're re-releasing it? How does that make you feel as an author?
I'm honored to still be around after 20 years of being an author. Vostok is my 15th novel, and wow. So I've lasted this long, and you and I go back quite a few of those years, and you know, it's if you would have told me it would have taken 20 years for the movie to finally get done, I would have shaken my head and wondered how I made it through that time. But hopefully, the writing began 20 years ago. The book was published 18 years ago, so maybe by the 20th anniversary of the book coming out, we'll see the movie in theaters.
Steve, do you have any words of wisdom for any aspiring authors out there in the X Zone Nation?
Well, my advice is always never to write a book about what you know. Write it about what you like to read, and then get the knowledge, get the information, do the research, because it's more important that the book is interesting as a read than it is about what you know.
What would Steve Alten say if a little green man came out of a UFO that was parked smack dab in the middle of the interstate?
What would I say to the green man?
Yep.
I'd probably ask Dr. Greer if it was a real green man or one of these fake aliens that they use for these to lure people into believing that extraterrestrials are bad, and so I'd check with him first. If he said it was real, then I'd welcome.
How many different species of extraterrestrials do you and Dr. Greer believe that are actually visiting this planet?
I have no way of knowing myself. Dr. Greer might say a dozen or more. It's hard to tell. I don't want to go out there and make a statement that I can't back up.
So do you think that these visitors pose any threat to this planet or to humankind?
No, I think we're the threat. I really do. I agree with Dr. Greer wholeheartedly that if you have to understand that in order to be able to access 0-point energy and have these type of ships that they do that can move in transdimensional space, you have to progress as a species to get rid of the violence. I mean, there's different types of civilizations, type 1, type 2, and type 3, and we're a type 0 civilization. We're the lowest form of a civilization. We're still using fossil fuels. We're still fighting each other as a species. In order to progress as a species up the ladder of civilizations, you really have to become a peaceful people, or you're not going to survive.
Tell me, Steve, do you think that we will see the acceptance, acknowledgement of our ET visitors in our lifetime?
I hope so. I think a lot of people have already accepted that, but I think the more important question is, are we going to be able to get out of control of the oil oligarchs and the banks and the people who are making decisions that are leading us down the wrong path? I mean, the biggest threat that we have to our survival is not ETs, it's ourselves and climate change. And, I just saw a program on Vice, a great program that exposes that these climate change deniers are out there. He's spending a lot of money. The Koch brothers are spending a lot of money to convince people that it isn't happening, and it is happening, and it is affecting this world. And unless we get beyond that and stop politicizing this issue and get to real solutions, we're in big trouble.
Steve Alten, as always, time with you goes by so fast. I want to thank you so much for joining us here in the X Zone. Great talking to you. Congratulations on yet another book, and I can't wait until the next time you and I meet here in the X Zone to talk about the Mayan prophecies. X Zone Nation, Steve Alten has been my guest this hour. www.stevealten.com, and whether you're a skeptic or a believer, the truth lies within you. So until the next time we meet here in the X Zone, from everyone here at the X Zone radio and TV show to everyone out there, always remember to keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. Good night now.